Hey friends, this is JB with the 14-Day Wisdom Challenge show. What day are you on? Are you on day 1 or are you on day 4? What's going on? Now you remember what the deal is. We've got to make that commitment for 14 days straight. 14 days straight in a row, and then see what the Lord does for you. See what pouring wisdom into your life for 14 days, you're committing to it, okay? You see what that gets you. And you remember what the rules are, okay? We've got a little method, and the method is this. Watch, read, and share. So easy. Seems like it's just a cakewalk, but I challenge you to actually carry it out for 14 days, because there's a little catch. There's a catch up there too. And that catch is that if you miss one day, you've got to start from scratch. That following day, you've got to start over. You start your 14 days over. So you're getting the wisdom. JB's bringing it to you. JB's bringing you the wisdom, and it's right from the Bible. It's great stuff. And I tell you what, each day is a different section, okay? Today's section is actually a little bit different because it's not titled. We're using the English Standard Version, and typically they title chapters new, sometimes not. And what we've decided to do is to go ahead and take each section. We're taking section and one at a time that are titled. This one with no title, it's the no title chapter of Ecclesiastes, chapter 10. But this wisdom is something to be poured out, and it's being poured out to you. But you've got to receive it. You've got to take your cup and say, "You're pouring it out. I'm gonna lift my cup up, and you can pour it in, so that way you can drink from it." That's how that works, okay? You can't get something without putting a little bit of effort in. So follow these rules that we have up there. Read or watch, okay? First you're watching with us, you're reading it with us, and then you read it 2 times in the day, in the midday and the evening. Simple. And then distill it down. Teach it to someone. You share it. When you share, you're teaching. You're teaching it to someone else. You're preparing that message, and maybe in your own words. If you want to do it verbatim, that's fine. But better to do it in your own words. So what are you getting out of that? And you're sharing it with someone else. And then when you do that for 14 days straight, Lord, please bless these people. Please show them what wisdom in their lives will do. All right, let's get moving on this. Now, today we are in Ecclesiastes 10, as mentioned. And it's got some proverbs that we're just reading and ripping right off. Here we go. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench. You ever had that? You ever had some funk and you're like, oh man, you're like, I don't know what happened. Maybe you didn't put on the deodorant, and then you're like out on the town. You're like, oh no. Or maybe someone else did. Or maybe you know someone who had eaten a lot of garlic, and it's starting to come out through the pores. I had this one dude who did that one time, and he put on perfume, and it created this perfume funk that was somewhat offensive, even in a greater way, because it was spoiling the fragrance, which almost would forever put a negative scent image in your brain, and it's so terrible. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. And that's so true. A little folly. You know what? It's like almost trust. Trust I see as a building, okay? But it's at the very bottom. And if you remove just the very bottom floor of a tall building, or if you remove the first floor of a wisdom building with folly, that building comes tumbling right down, all of it. Okay, it doesn't just collapse and just set. No, it goes. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart inclines him to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. And what they're saying there is that typically people are right-handed for whatever reason, but the analogy is that that's the right way. Of nothing against you left-handed people out here. I can use either. Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense. Okay, even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he is a fool. Interesting. Okay. If the anger of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your place, for calmness will lay great offenses to rest. So you've ever had someone just start raging at you or whatever? I've had police do that before. Boy, that was tough. And I just tried to remain calm. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine if I didn't remain calm? Some of these guys, God bless them. And I would not want to, it's such a tough thing to be a police officer these days. But I've had some who were very rude before. And, if I have a bad day and I'm rude, I can kind of apologize. If they have a bad day, the sad part is like people can get tickets and go to jail. And they have a hard time backing out of it, even though it might be a mistake. So the calmness, though, will soothe that. I've done before where I've kept my mouth shut. I was like, man, I will just say something stupid and rude. And that pissed him off too. But the problem is that I know that if I would have opened my mouth, it would have come forth like a fountain of words, possibly. Okay. And when I finally did, a little bit of that did sneak out. So it's wise sometimes just to shut it. Okay. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, as it were an heir proceeding from the ruler. Okay. This is an evil such that it is as bad as an heir proceeding from the ruler. What about our president? What about the previous president and the previous president besides that? When the president makes an error, the media is all over it. Not so much last presidency. They sort of had love on him for everything. But this one little thing he does, everyone is jumping on it. And sometimes he does them. Okay? And when he does them for real, then it's bad news. Folly is set in many high places, and the rich silt in low places. And the rich sit in low places. Okay, so this is the folly where folly is set in high places. Sorry about that, I kind of muffed that. Folly is set in many high places, and the rich sit in low places. So let's say you're rich in the Lord, but you're being trampled on, and you're in a low place. That's the evil that he's talking about. It's like such a shame. You've seen it though. And he's seen these fools get to these high places. Let me tell you what, you've seen that before. Fools get to high places. You ever see that? It's people, places you work with, okay? Different organizations, government, yeah. So when the folly gets in high places, it is an evil that is bad as an heir proceeding from a ruler. I have seen slaves on horses and princes walking on the ground like slaves. Now in America, there's a tough time processing slavery because of the slaves and the utter sad, evil things that were done to slaves in America. And actually it was done more in South America, but wherever. And the point is that back then it was sort of understood that's kind of par for being conquered, and slaves were basically the point is that the slave who has been conquered, because originally in order for you to be conquered, you essentially are putting your lot with a certain team, a certain country. You are saying that I am going to... let me give you an example here. When I was young, it was 1991, and I had a group of friends. Many of them were just fine, okay? But one of them happened to be older, and we would rarely hang out with this person. But in this time, we hung out with him, and he went and picked a bone with the toughest kid in the school. I was just around the other guy. I wasn't around the tough guy. I was around the other guy. Well, I basically put my lot with him. Now, when my friend, who we rarely saw, weren't really great friends with, left in a different time on a different day. He was not around. The big bully came and punched me in the face. And, and it's kind of like I have to take ownership of putting myself in the company of that. And back then, if you were doing that, you put yourself in the company of people and they were conquered, then you became the slave. And so to have the person who was conquered and the slave be put on a horse would be really a ludicrous thing. And princes walking on the ground like slaves. Now, the guy who punched me in the mouth was no prince, let me tell you that. But the part of the analogy works. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and a serpent will bite him who breaks through a wall. Okay? You don't know what that wall was there for. You get on the other side and you all of a sudden get bit. He who quarries stone is hurt by them, and he who splits logs is endangered by them. Okay, you work with things, you're gonna naturally get hurt. Okay, if the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use much more strength. He must use more strength, but wisdom helps one to succeed. So the wise one sharpens the axe. Man, this is a great analogy. You try to be hitting that tree with a dull axe, and you can beat on that tree, you know what, eventually. But with a sharp axe, just stop. Be wise. Sharpen the axe. And guess what? It'll help. If the serpent bites before it is charmed, there is no advantage to the charmer. Okay? And it's funny, boy, we don't hear, when we think of serpents being charmed in today's day, we're a little bit miffed. It's still kind of like an unusual thing, huh? We don't see many snakes and many people charming snakes, but they talk about it as if it's probably on the street corner back in Jerusalem somewhere, huh? And that's just conjures up great images. The words of the wise man's mouth win him favor, but the lips of a fool consume him. Yeah, I've been there. I've been there so many times. But I learned. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is evil madness. A fool multiplies words. Isn't that true? Always got something to say, though no man knows what it is to be. They're just words. They're pouring out, and it's like, what? And who can tell him what will be after him? The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city. Poor thing. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princess feast in the morning. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princess feast in the morning. So the time to feast typically isn't morning, is it? It's typically after the workday, after you've put some effort in, and you've got a king child. Man, what kind of decisions are going to be made with a child who's a king? Woe to you, that land. Happy are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobility, and your princes feast at the proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. Okay? Proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. You don't want to be just drinking just to get drunk, okay? Happy are you, O land, when the king is the son of nobility, and your princes feast at the proper time for strength, not for drunkenness. Not just to go nothing. Though sloth of the roof sinks in. No, through sloth the roof sinks in, and through indolence the house leaks. Through sloth the roof sinks in. So basically, those who put in just a poor effort. Let me just say a poor effort. And what happens is, in any poor job, you ever have someone who's trying to, you've got a worker who you're expecting some quality help from, and they just kind of phone it in, okay? They just phone it in. Guess what? The house leaks, okay? I got my wife. She's got someone who supposedly fixed something in their office, and now it's leaking again. Guess what? It's probably done because someone is slacking. Bread is made for laughter, and wine gladdens life. And money answers everything. Okay? Well, money is often an answer. It's not always the right answer, but you'll find it does answer everything. Even in your thoughts, do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. You got to give it to God. Say, God, I can't handle this guy, this girl, this ruler, this manager, this boss, this person, and then you give it to God. Look, bless them. Then then when God, you know what God does? He hears your prayers, and he may, in fact, bring them close to him. And oftentimes, like for me, and I'm sure for you, it's painful. It's painful to do that, to get to God, to get closer to God. Sometimes he's got to smooth our rough edges. He's got to chip away some of that rock and stone around our heart. And when he does that, there's sometimes pain. It depends what the situation is. For me, it was a long, enduring, and very difficult time. And when God does that to a ruler, because the prideful ruler, person who is not really aligned with God, if God brings him to him, he may do it by bringing him crashing down. He may do it by because the contrast of the king or the ruler or the authority over you, who has so many great things, that contrast to where God brings them to humble them, to bring them into his fold, can be a big journey. That's why they say it's more difficult for it's more easy for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle, or a camel go through the eye of a needle, than it is for a rich man to get to heaven, because it is such a contrast for a rich person to give up their things, their doodads, their power. Okay, it's such a challenge to do that for them, that it's wow, it's got to go so far, because it's that contrast. So when you pray for those guys, girls, whoever's in charge, you may be doing, it may be worse than for you to just say, look, put a flat tire on their car, or whatever it is. If you were to do some vandalism or something like this, that the thing is that God will handle it in a better way, more mature than some of your ideas are, right? JB's got a number of still some immature ones that have been in memory and probably are not funny, but it's funny that I can even bring some of these up out of the woodwork. All right. For a bird of the air will carry your voice, or some winged creature will tell the matter. Yeah, and that's true. It's tough. It's tough to, sometimes you want to reconcile what is even going on. You're like, am I crazy? Is this leader of mine doing this? I mean, and sometimes I kind of put the sanity check out there, and I'm trying to get some like validation from people. Have I heard this right? Am I crazy, or is this? And so, but beyond trying to understand instructions and trying to reconcile that within your head, to curse a king or to curse your authority, who's ever above you, whatever, or influencing you, you don't want to be doing that. So give it to God. God, forgive me for doing it. I'm thinking probably done that myself, but yeah, ask God for forgiveness, move on, and be wise about things. All right, so the unnamed chapter of Ecclesiastes brings in some great points. Had a little bit discussion over it. Now, don't forget, you've got some work to do, right? What is your work? Your work is above here. You've got to watch. You've got to read 3 times. We just finished once. Second time midday, third time in the evening. Share. Don't forget to share, my friends. Sharing helps you resonate this information much better. So find some of this in here, pull some nuggets out, share some of it, share what's going on, teach someone. By teaching, you'll do it. By teaching, it'll get in you. And that's part of the 14-day wisdom challenge. And I'm JB with the 14-day wisdom challenge show. My friends, get some wisdom, get insight, get understanding. Let's do this. All right.